Holiness unto the Lord. A man in a year, as we know somebody which and own in a God bless you for today. This is a short intro to the um, talk we'll be having, God willing, on Friday, concerning dealing with past wounds in relationship. And I'm doing this intro to give you a gist of what will be happening if you make it to the program. Um, Usually, when we talk about wounds in a relationship, we need to understand what they are so that we can know how to handle them, even how to recognize them. There are many people with wounds, but they don't recognize them. You see, as you made promises to each other, as you adjusted to each other as a couple, as people in a relationship, you made concessions, you made agreements. Actually, you came together in several ways, emotionally and sometimes even physically. And because of that, there's a connection that has been created. When there's a breakup, there is this unceremonious, this violent tear of what has been brought together. And because of this violent tear, it leads to wounds. Some of yours gets to the person, some of him remains on you. So you go with each other, unequal separation happens. And it is those unequal separations that leads to the wounds that we are talking about. You know, but because this is an intro and we are doing this quickly, what is a wound? The wound is when you get part of your body, bruised or hurt because the skin is open. And because the skin is open, it's open to infection. You may see blood and all of those things. But we also know that sometimes when you have an accident, doctors will tell you that what you have is an internal wound. You have an internal bleeding. In other words, the wound is happening internally. You don't see it physically, and yet it can kill you because that's happened below the skin. In the same way, in every relationship, when there's a breakup because it was some disagreement, because there was some abuse, because there was somebody who came into the picture and just disrupted it. It's not planned, it's not surgical, it's not neat, it's not tidy. So they are wounds. And because they are wounds, they are internal wounds and then they are external wounds. Okay, so let's deal with the, or should I say, they are open wounds and then they are hidden wounds or closed wounds. Let's deal with the closed wounds. The things that lead to an open wound. Yes, an open wound. Sorry, the things that leads to an open wound are usually the promises broken. You said we go the long haul. You said this thing is forever. You said I'm your queen. You said I'm your king. All of those promises that filled your head, that made you feel special, have been broken. And that disappointment, that thought that, so was it a lie? That thought that you were deceived, that thought that you were led on a wild goose chase, that thought that you'll be made a fool of, that pain is an open wound. It will be clear that you are wounded because you will speak it, you will cry it, you become moody out of it, and all of those things. You avoid people because of it. So that was an open wound. And then another wound that is created because of the feelings you have to deal with. This person, you still have feelings for the person, or that now these feelings have turned into anger because of the disappointment, because of the person cheated on you and the rest. So these are feelings you can't just dismiss, and yet they are there. you know, a song you used to like will come up, places you used to go to when you see them, people that he or she knew when you see them. It will remind you of him, it will remind you of her. And then the feeling will be intense as to what you've lost, as to what cannot become anymore, as to what cannot be anymore. And that is an open wound. That is clear. You don't want to have anything to do with the person. You are not talking to the person again. You don't want to have any association with anything because they all remind you of the feelings that you once had for somebody. So the first open wound is promises broken. The second open wound has to do with dealing with the feelings that have been left unsatisfied, unmet, disappointed. The third open wound has to come from where do you go from here I mean, how do you start all over after having given years, after having given your time, your energy to this relationship? Now that there's no more, how are you going to cope? How are you going to have to undo all that you have done? How you have to relearn, unlearn, and all of those things? That enormity, that task will make it difficult for you to actually, I mean, to bear the pain of that work that you have to undo and do and redo. It will even make the pain more intense. When you think of all the people you introduce the person to, you think of all the people who are going to ask you of the person. Where is so and so? Anytime you have to come up with some explanation and you have to relieve the trauma all over again. So the pain of starting over is a very painful thing. In fact, for many people, especially for women who have been in a relationship for a long time, most of their very youthful years when they're in their prime has gone. Now that they are most about exiting the market, that's when you have left them. So how do I start all over? It's one of the most painful things, especially for women in relationship. And for men, how do I start for all the investment I've made? I've sent you to school, I've helped you, I've guided you, I've prayed with you. Now that I'm thinking you're going to become my wife, something has become an issue. How do I start all over again? How do I even have the patience to start with another young lady? So these are the pains that come. So those are the pains that come, which we call the wounds that come out of, we call open wounds. Those ones everybody has admitted. Now we come to the ones which are close, which most people are not even aware. Close wounds. Actually, you might not be aware of it until someone draws your attention. Now, the close wounds are the fact that you think the person has tainted your image. You had a plan. You finish school, you get married, and now because of this disruption, that plan has been tainted. Your peers have always known you to always know what you're about. Suddenly, this person has disrupted your plan and tainted your image of knowing what you're about, of being consistent, of knowing what you want, of being blessed by God, of being a Christian, and all of those things. So that is an internal wound you might not share with anybody. You might not even notice that this person has embarrassed you, has disgraced you, and that will be a wound inside of you that will be boiling. You know, the second wound, which people don't normally pay attention to, is the fact that that relationship that is lost and gone taints, corrupts the image you have of the opposite sex. That is when people begin to say, "Oh, women are bad. All women are tricksters. All guys are dogs, and all guys are." I mean, you have not met all guys. You've only met one guy. You've only met one woman or two who have been disappointing. That is a very deep wound that, if it's not dealt with, is going to affect you going forward. Indeed, you're going to end up punishing the wrong person who might be innocent and maybe even be the one that you should have been with before this other person. So that's number two. Close one. The first one is that you have this tinted image that you think you are carrying about. The second one being that your image of that sex actually become distorted and can lead to you hating that sex or even having wrong impressions of that sex. And then um, the other wound to internally is that you have tuned your life to suit somebody for all these years. The person has trained you, if you're a lady, or you have trained this guy, and you have adapted yourself to this person. Suddenly, the way you have been tuned might not be suitable for somebody else. That's what the men normally describe as excess baggage. Somebody has been trained by somebody, and because of that, the person is used to a certain way. Especially when you start a relationship for more than 2, 3, 4 years, by all means, you train each other, iron sharpen iron. So once that person is no longer there, all that training becomes something that becomes an obstacle against somebody else who wants a different thing from you. So that's another wound that needs to be healed. You need to be retrained so that you can be more suited to somebody else. And then lastly, uh, yes, the last thing, which is most is that is that wound of, I mean, um, becoming optimistic about loving again. Now that whole thing of loving again becomes a burden. And you wonder, I mean, can I love again? Can I go through this again? Can I really give myself the chance to love again? And most people don't pay attention to these things. And by the time they realize, they are self sabotaging every relationship they can have. because of this wound of fear of starting again, of fear of giving ourselves too much into relationship, fear of being hurt again, fear of actually being disappointed again. It makes us less, makes us more cautious and less adventurous. And without being adventurous, love is going into the unknown. If you're not adventurous, you cannot do it. So join us, even if, as we have the open discussion on the matter. God bless you, even as we help each other to heal old wounds in relationships. God bless you. Amen. God bless you. Amen.